Okay, so this is just a quick explanation on the secure multi-account model deployment with SageMaker. So this is a blog post that was put together by someone at AWS. And this session, I just want to discuss the high level kind of idea around this solution that was put together. So I'll talk just through this diagram basically. Okay, so what we want to do is have a process of building, training, validating, registering, and then going through a approve, test, and deploy process for all our machine learning models. Okay. Let's see, where do we start? Probably down here. Okay, so at the bottom, you've got S3, right? You've got a data bucket, you've got a model bucket, code pipeline, artifact bucket. Okay. So the main bits are the data bucket and the model bucket. So if you think about the data bucket, you can think of all the CSV files and Parquet files that you have in S3. So all those source data files, that's in the S3 data bucket. Then you have the model bucket. Those are the model files, the binary files, the compressed tar.gz files that are used by SageMaker to inference and make predictions. And then lastly, you've got the code pipeline artifact bucket, and that's just a bucket to manage the whole process as your code and data and model goes through build, train, validate, register, and through the approve, test, and deploy process. So it's kind of orchestration. Okay, so you've got all your data stored, and the idea here is we're going to limit the access to these artifacts in such a way that only resources which are residing within a specific VPC are allowed access to these buckets. Okay, so you can see here there's data access VPC-E, so that's a VPC virtual private cloud endpoint. And so that endpoint provides access to S3 services, right? So here you're going to have a VPC, so that's the green circle, or it's green square, and that's going to represent the VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. So that's a closed off local area network. And so we're going to create this as a isolated network where it's going to only have access to resources within this network, and it's not going to have internet access, but also this limited network is going to have access to these VPC endpoints. And so one of these VPC endpoints is going to allow access to S3 services. So that's going to open up access to S3, and then these buckets are going to have bucket policies, which are going to enforce connections only from a given VPC. So that means if these buckets were accessed via the internet or via RACQ's existing network, all of those would be denied. And access would only be given if the original command was initiated from within the VPC environment. Okay, so anyway, you've got this closed off VPC network, but now these three buckets now basically extend that closed off environment. Okay, so that's where all the data comes from. And then we have our VPC. All right, so our VPC is designed to be a closed off environment. It's not meant to be accessed by any other resources, and it's not meant to be able to access anything else apart from the data sources defined here. Okay, so here inside the VPC, you can see we've got SageMaker Studio. So SageMaker Studio is a kind of a collection of all the SageMaker components. So you've got SageMaker notebooks that forms the work environments for data scientists to use Jupyter notebooks to pull in data, manipulate data, generate features, and then train their models, validate it, and all those kind of things. So SageMaker also has SageMaker Pipelines. So SageMaker Pipelines, actually, SageMaker Pipelines is probably up here. So SageMaker Projects is an idea to encapsulate a single ML workflow in a project. And then once you have that SageMaker project, then you tack on SageMaker Pipelines. So SageMaker Pipelines manages the whole process for build, train, validate, register, approve, test, deploy. That whole process is managed by pipelines. And all of this falls under the umbrella of SageMaker Studio domain, or SageMaker Studio. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be deploying into our isolated VPC, we're going to be deploying this SageMaker Studio domain, which we're going to be creating multiple SageMaker projects, and each of these SageMaker projects is going to have a pipeline attached to it, and that pipeline will link into the SageMaker project and go through the whole process of building, training, validating, registering, approving, test, deploying that model. Okay. Now, where next? And then next is the organization projects. Okay, this is the service catalog. Okay, so we've got all of this set up. So how does this all get deployed? So on the left-hand side, you've got AWS Service Catalog. So we're using AWS Service Catalog to deploy these components. We're using the catalog to deploy everything within the development organizational unit, except for the S3 buckets. Those we could reuse existing buckets, or we could get the solution to create them. So first off, we've got two main components. We've got the data science environment product, and then we've got these other two products, which is the model build and train, and then the model deploy. Okay, so let's just focus on this. So the data science environment, so you're going to have the service catalog, you're going to have a portfolio. In the portfolio, you're going to have a product, and the product is this whole solution, this whole stack, this VPC, the SageMaker Studio, the all the templates to spin up new projects and new pipelines. It might have definitions for your buckets and all the permissions and all the VPC endpoints to link up the VPC to S3. So what happens is we're going to have our code repository, right? And our code repository is going to have everything in code. First off, we're going to deploy our service catalog artifacts, which is going to be a portfolio with the data science environment product. And then someone's going to deploy that data science environment product, and that would deploy the VPC, the studio, the project templates, and the S3 buckets. Okay, once that's deployed, then we're going to have also user accounts. In this whole deployment, you're going to have things like data science team admin, and then data science analyst, or something, right? So for each new project, someone's going to go into SageMaker Studio, going to work out, okay, am I wanting to build a new model, or do I want to deploy an existing model? Right, so if you can see here, you've got a model build train. So this kind of corresponds to this top section, this build, train, validate, register. So you're going to build your model, pulling data in transforming them into features. You're going to be training your model, then you can validate, and then if it's all good, you're going to register it. Actually, you might register it regardless. So the results of your whole build, train, validate process is going to be registered into the model registry. So good or bad, it's going to get registered into the model registry. Then you're going to have another process called the model deploy. So the model deploy kind of relates to the bottom process where it will approve. So it'll look at your model registry, look at the accuracy, the outcomes of your models. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they suitable for production use? And if they're suitable for production use, then you approve it, then you test it, then you deploy it as an endpoint of some sort for production usage. So you can see that there's two kind of workflows here. You've got one workflow is the model build, train, validate, and second workflow is the model deploy. So these projects, we think of them as separate projects. So this is the initial project to do all the data exploration, to build out your model. And then the second project is to take trained models into production. Okay. So what else to talk about? So just again, the environment that spins up the whole VPC and all the SageMaker Studio and all the IAM permissions and everything, creates the connection to S3 and whatnot, and all the S3 buckets. Once we've got the environment up and running, then we're going to have different people like administrators and users. So the administrators are going to work out, okay, we've got this new piece of work, let's create a new model, and we're going to create a model build train project. So that would be a new project here. Alongside that, you'll have a SageMaker pipeline process attached to that, and then that will take your data down here, pull it all in, transform it into features, train it, validate, and then store the results or register the results into the model registry. The second step is, okay, the administrator sees, okay, we've got our model, we've got a few models, let's go through the process of reviewing it and approving it. So you spin up a new model deploy process that will, again, create a new SageMaker project. It has its own MLOps CI/CD process, which is these three stages here: approve, test, deploy. And it just feeds from the model registry, approve, test it, deploy it, and then it goes off into the different accounts. So these could be either local accounts or cross accounts, so into other AWS accounts. Anyway, so I just thought I'd just give a high level on what this solution is designed to do and how it all works, and highlight the, I guess, idea around this environment is meant to be very closed off, and the only input and output of this environment is via very controlled S3 buckets, and the data access is constrained in such a way that resources within this VPC can only access S3 resources via this endpoint, and then the S3 resources themselves can only allow connections from this originating VPC. So it's kind of like a two-way handshake. So the VPC authenticates on that VPC endpoint, and then the buckets also doubly confirm that the connection is coming from the VPC itself. Then the VPC, again, has no internet connectivity, no inputs and outputs. And then secondly, the whole process of building the models is all managed internally, and then the deployment process is something through the, it's part of SageMaker and the way that it deploys models. Okay? All right, that's it for now. Thanks.